I'm gonna make the video anyway. Hello, this is video 650. This is gonna be a little bit about. Um, I already forgot what it's gonna be about. It's gonna be. I'm gonna touch a little bit about the right age to transition and somewhat a call for two things: universal health care and universal income. If you're wondering, there's nothing wrong with your computer. My computer is doing a thing where the video is not lining up with the audio 100%. So it may somewhat look like a bad dubbing, but that's not what it is. The camera is only capturing maybe, I'd say, 50 to 75% of the frames, but it's trying to keep up with the audio. So the audio is going to be a little bit weird. So it's going to look like a bad dub job, I'm sure, but hopefully touch upon some cool points. Uh, the first one is, when is the best time to transition? A friend of mine, Jamie, posted on her Facebook page a question about when was the best time to transition. And of course, we all know that the answer to that is the best time to transition is whenever the best time to transition is for the individual. There is no ideal age, time, or situation for a person to transition other than when it is the best time for that person, which is going to vary from person to person, situation to situation, and place to place. In an ideal world, which we'll hit on universal health care in a minute, but in an ideal world, yes, we could hope that a child who feels like they're transgender could say something to a parent or government or whomever and say I'm transgender and get on some sort of counseling program. Therapist gets approved for some sort of androgen blockers, um, to the point that they're sure that's what they want to do, or if that's what they want to do and they know it right from in there, get on some blockers and then gets on hormones. We'll go the MTF route. Some hormones and counseling in their childhood and young adulthood, and they live the most of their life as they can as trans women. That would be like the ideal situation that maybe we all aspire for. Unfortunately, that's not reality. It's not our current reality, at least not here in the United States. Uh, I did a little bit of research this morning because the Democratic debate talked a lot about Denmark as being like the ideal place, and Denmark is actually pretty progressive when it comes to trans issues. It was the place where Christina Jorgensen went and had her surgery back in the day, two surgeries. You know, the first probably, maybe arguably the first nationally known trans woman. But anyway, um, very famous trans woman. So where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us again back to the idea of when is the best age. It's going to be whenever that person has the ability to do it. That's the best age for them. I think, speaking for myself, a trap that an older trans woman such as myself falls into is I forget just how much of a circus young life can be when you're still dealing with being transgender or coming to terms with you being transgender. It's you know, I take it for granted because I know I'm transgender and I've already transitioned. I've had my surgery. I'm full time and have been so for a number of years. So it's very easy for me to forget what it's like to be, um, 14, 15, 16 and confused, or maybe feeling a lot of shame and guilt about my feelings and not knowing how to verbalize them and everything else. It's very hard, like I said, it's easy for me to forget that because of where I am in my situation. And so, there's a lot of this self searching, soul searching that we have to do initially to come to terms with who and what we are. And then we make the decision to do something about that. And that in of itself can take years, if not decades. And so again, maybe we're not ready, even though we know we're transgender. We're not ready maybe in our 20s and our 30s. It may take to the point that we can't stand it anymore. And that could be someone in their 30s or 40s or 50s or later, 70s, 80s. So again, the perfect time is when we get to it, is probably the shortest answer to that. What I find as being somewhat of something that is a challenge for any trans person is that when our bodies are the most malleable, when we're in our teens, if not, single digits, we lack the funds to transition. Now, I know it depends on if you have access to health care or not, but when you look at hormones and surgery, perhaps a little bit of electrolysis or laser, all of these things are expensive. And you just don't have access to that funds or the ability to transition until you're, early to middle age or later. And of course, when you do have access to those funds, half your life is over and your body is already set in its ways. Your body is not going to, being 50 or 60 or 40, 50, 60 years old compared to being 20 or 30 years old, your body's just not going to react to the hormones as well. And so it's kind of an inverse relationship. When your body's young and malleable and you can really get some good results, you don't have the financial resources to do it. Conversely, later on in life, when you do have access to those things, when you can stand on your own 2 feet and have surgery or transition, do the hormones and electrolysis and all that, your body may be a little bit not as susceptible to those changes. So your results are not going to be as well. So as I've made mention in my other videos, if you're young and in your 20s and able to transition, boy, I hate you. Just kidding. Not really. Not really. Best of luck to you, you bitch. All in jest. All in jest. In all honesty, good luck to you. Seriously. So all that said, we'll switch over to the second half of this, and it's somewhat of a call for universal health care. One way, again, what I alluded to being in your teens, wouldn't it be nice to come to terms with who or what you are, have access to psychological counseling, therapy, to deal with perhaps some depression or anxiety issues and kind of really root out, wouldn't it be nice to be able to do that in your early mid-teens and then have access to a doctor and hormones and whatnot? Wouldn't that be wonderful to have access to that? And then you could live more of your life as transitioned full time. Part of the obstacle to that is healthcare. And so, I don't know really if you've thought about it, but, I think as a trans woman, we really would like to have that. That would be the optimal situation. And so it's kind of what I consider to be a plea for universal health care. Obviously, it's too late for me, but I vote, and my vote is one vote amongst many, and I can put that support towards universal health care to make it easier for the next trans woman who comes along, the next young lady who, and that alludes to me again. Good luck to you. Don't hate you. You lucky bitch. But again, to make it easier for the next gen, in all sincerity, and to make it easier for the next generation, I think if we had access to universal health care, it wouldn't be much of an issue. Now, that said, what an uphill battle we have to try and, I can only hope that future generations Um, assuming that YouTube is still around or whatnot, that future generations might look back upon this video and say, oh, how outdated is that? They don't have universal health care in the United States. We have it now. That's my hope. Number one, for trans women to have access to transitioning at an earlier age, but also, too, just for everybody else. The idea that if you're sick, you get to see a doctor. If you need medication, you get it. I mean, I would almost say that I can almost say it with confidence that, if you're against universal health care, you're kind of a prick. It just, I mean, what nice person wouldn't want their fellow human being to have access to medical care? It just doesn't make any sense to me, but that's just my own opinion, not necessarily the opinion of anyone else or anyone else that I know of. And it's just my own personal feelings. Yeah, but hopefully that doesn't tick too many people off or whatnot. But it is a hard pill to swallow, admittedly. And I can remember back when I was in my 20s or 30s, especially when I was, somewhat living the lie of, that had my beard and living the lie somewhat, being a walking corpse. You know, um, it's hard to, in America, we think of, well, if I work hard and whatever, I'm gonna earn. You people, you earn, and here I've worked for this, and it's mine, and uh, it is gonna be a hard pill to swallow for those first few generations. The idea of giving healthcare as part of a national right, much like United Kingdom or Canada or Denmark or Sweden or Finland or a lot of the other nations in the world who do have some sort of nationalized healthcare system. It is a hard pill to swallow in the United States. We're not accustomed to that. We're sort of programmed with the idea of, you go get, and what you get is yours and you don't have to share it. And especially in a system, people have made money. There's lobbyists and unions who are definitely against universal health care because it's part of their bargaining rights with their companies. If you're a carpenter or whatnot, and you're a service person and you have the opportunity or the option to join a union, and the union doesn't represent you when it comes to healthcare, that's a huge power that's going to be taken away from unions. It's a huge power that's going to be taken away from different industries who are built around privatized healthcare. Hell, what the fuck? I mean, why? If we were to follow what the the United Kingdom has both nationalized healthcare and private healthcare. You could have both. You don't necessarily have to have just one or the other. It's kind of a shame right now that how closed-minded we are to universal healthcare. It's just one of those things. It's like getting a driver's license, or getting your child, a birth certificate. It's just something that it's just going to require a bit of a paradigm shift, especially, like I said, for the first few generations of people who are like, no, I went to college, I got a degree, and I have a job, and that job entitled, my employer provides health care. It's going to be a hard pill to swallow. It really, really is. But well, why should you give health care to anybody? Well, like I said before, if you don't want everyone to have access to a doctor, you got issues. But again, and even the company I used to work with was in the healthcare industry, and they bid on government military healthcare contracts. Think about it that way. You could have competing companies to provide national health care. You still would have the healthcare industry. You still would have jobs. You still would have a system. I mean, again, initially I thought, most companies, United Healthcare, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Humana, they would not want nationalized healthcare. But then the more I thought about it, I'm like, well, no, that's, again, private enterprise. You could open it up much like they have for the TRICARE system or the VA system, and open that. Well, the VA is a different entity. Let's not talk about that. But again, TRICARE, for example, yeah, open it up, compete, you know. Just a thought, just a thought. How would you pay for it? Well, I don't know about you, but it seems like every year the United States government is in a budget crisis and they raise the debt ceiling. They get what they want. Congress people have spending pork. I mean, they raise the bill, they spend the money what they want, and they give it to their friends or whatnot. Why not do the same thing but have a benefit of United Healthcare for everybody? It's pretty simple to me. It really, really is. And the other thing is, our government always seems to find money for weird things. Foreign aid is one thing. I know currently, I checked this afternoon, the United States government gives over $50 billion a year in foreign aid. What would it cost to do some sort of a universal healthcare system? Take that $50 billion and invest in our own people. I mean, again, hey, you won't know till you try. You know, you won't know till you try. You won't know till you try. So there's that. And you know, if the U.S. military seems to have a bottomless pocket, President of the United States can sit there and bomb a country because he feels like it. And you know, the amount of money that it takes. I mean, again, our current president seems to fly down to his own private golf club every weekend in Florida. How much money does that take to provide that service with the Secret Service and everything else? And I mean, again, it's to say we don't have the money, that just doesn't make any sense. Hell, print more money if you want. But that said, and then the third point that I'll make, which is going to come across as totally unsensical and doesn't make any sense, is the idea of a universal basic income, which some candidates periodically talk about, and you know, most people poo-poo it because it sounds like socialism or communism, and they really need to look those definitions up to make sure what they're talking about. But imagine, if you will, everyone in the United States getting paid the same amount of money no matter what they do. And I can feel it already. People going, it doesn't make any sense. No, it doesn't. We've been taught, again, if I work hard and I get my money, then I'm gonna, you know, make more money than you. You know, I'm gonna be a doctor or a lawyer, and I'm gonna make more money than you, and I'm gonna have a safer security and build more wealth and stability for my family. I mean, that's what we've been taught. But imagine a different way of looking at things. Maybe you still have access to funds like that, but the government would provide so much money per month, enough for you to live off of, so you wouldn't have to do that. And that would mean that you could do whatever the hell you wanted to do as a job and get paid. You know, you wouldn't have such a large economic system. You know, everyone gets paid the same, which again kind of sounds like what I think we would think of communism and Russia and whatnot. But some countries have tried it. Finland worked out well for them. You wouldn't have such a economic disparity between people. Eventually, you wouldn't have, you know, billionaires who don't seem to pay taxes and poor people who can't seem to, you know, get themselves out of a bad situation. You know, you would have universal income. I don't know. I kind of like the idea, but that's just me. Look it up if you want to. Universal basic income, universal health care, and of course, when is the right age to transition? maybe 3 unrelated topics, but it's been on my mind today. Um, what started it off was I got a visit by a survey by a person. Well, Jamie's post. I'm sorry, I'm gonna rewind. What is the right age to transition came from Jamie's post on her website, on her Facebook page. But the idea of, kind of a bridge into healthcare came from that into a survey that I had to fill out this morning. I got asked to fill out a survey by the Department of Health and Human Services about healthcare, and that really got me thinking about it in my own current situation, where my current employer doesn't provide healthcare. And so even though I'm working full time and paying taxes and everything, my employer doesn't provide health care. Well, I can't afford health care, so I don't have health care. So I don't have the same protection that someone who has health care does. And it just it kind of attracts me. It really does attract me that if you took health care out of, you know, out of the employment system and just made it universal for everybody, much like Medicare, just how different that would be. You wouldn't have premiums. You wouldn't have money coming out of your paycheck. You wouldn't have a health savings account. It might come out of a flat tax. It might come out of an income tax. I don't know. But everyone would pay it. Nobody would get off, scot-free. Everyone would pay the tax. Or like I said, the government always seems to find money to do something militarily. Tap into that, or with the foreign aid, and have universal health care. If you really wanted to improve everyone's, not only their access to care, but their standard of living, provide them with that. There'd be no excuse. People may live longer, they may contribute to society more, and also to the economy. And that also comes into the idea of a basic income. If you had, if you had an extra $1,500 a month or $1,000 a month, what would you do with it? Would you blow it? Would you invest it? It's totally up to you what you would do with it. But think about how that would stimulate the economy in your area. Think about, if you had that money, you might be able to buy fresh fruits and vegetables that would support your local farmers and agriculture. Think about, I can tell you in my kitchen right now, buying canned vegetables is cheaper than anything else. Well, those vegetables are high in sodium, which leads to high blood pressure and everything. Can you imagine that money going into your local farmers market, your local economy, and then those people have money and they spend it? I mean, it's a rising tide lifts all boats. So anyway, just me ranting, but I thought I would share a little bit. And definitely it affects me, but the idea again of when is the best time to transition. If you had access to that counseling and hormones and everything else at a young age, how would your life have been different? And would you be willing to sort of raise a bit of a fuss now with voting and supporting, getting involved in your community to make universal health care a possibility? Or would you even consider the idea, like I said, of a universal basic income? Imagine that. As far as transitioning goes, you'd have the money, you'd have access to care. Again, it makes it easier for the future generations, doesn't it? But all right, my friends, for me and Harry the sleeping cat, we'll say sign off now. If you have any other ideas, if you have some pros or cons, please post them in the comments. And good luck to you in becoming your authentic self as you define it. All right, till next time, goodbye. I'm going to post some links in the two links. Two songs came to mind today. The first one was Billy Joel's Second Wind, someone had asked me about suicide, and I kind of explained my views on suicide, which are probably, I'm going to save those probably for a whole other video. But I can sum up my views on suicide, and is that, someone, and let me take everyone else out of it. My own experience, when I went to my counselor, when I was able to talk, the first person I was able to talk to was a school therapist when I was at Georgia Tech, and I was 18 years old, and I said, I'm transgender. I know I'm transgender. Where can I go? What can I do? And that person basically said that, transitioning is not going to help you out. Transitioning is not an answer. And of course, that was total and pure bullshit. The secret to surviving, if you're transgender, is transitioning, is becoming full-time. And how that ties in somewhat with suicide is, over the years, I've heard a lot of people say to me and other people, suicide is not an answer. Suicide doesn't solve anything. And that in of itself is total bullshit as well. And the reason being, I guess we are going to talk about it very briefly, is if a person is suicidal, they're suffering. They don't want to live. They want to end their life so that they're no longer suffering. Okay? Fair? Some, maybe. I would say so. If you're truly suicidal. Okay? And so, for that person to kill themselves, they're going to end their suffering. They're no longer going to be around. Okay? Now, the people that are around them, yes, there is going to be suffering. There's going to be a lot of sadness. Particularly for those who love the person, they're going to miss them because that person is gone. And especially a lot of terror from whoever finds the person because they're dead. What do you do with the dead body? So there's a lot of misery that will come after a suicide. But for that individual who truly does not want to be alive, killing themselves takes away that suffering. So the idea that suicide doesn't solve anything, that in of itself is total bullshit. Now, again, I'll put that caveat in there. For everyone else around that person, yes, there is going to be some suffering. And it's a terrible, terrible thing. No one wants to see someone else suffer. And so again, draw a parallel to the transition if you can. Someone who doesn't want to see someone suffer through what they think transitioning is, they're going to say, well, transitioning is not going to solve your problems. It's total bullshit both times. Now, I don't condone suicide. I don't want anyone to kill themselves. This video is not meant to help you decide one way or the other. But what I can say to someone who is feeling suicidal is to wait it out if you can. Okay. Wait it out if you can. Usually something else will come along. Something else will pop up that will help lift you up. Okay. Something else is going to come along. Something is going to change. And you may regret it later. You're going to miss out. And that's where the song Second Wind comes in by Billy Joel. And if you haven't heard it, I highly recommend. I'm going to put a link in the video to it because it really is true, in my opinion. And there's a line in it where he says, I wouldn't offer it to you if I didn't know myself. And what's significant about that is Billy Joel did try to kill himself. He signed himself into a mental home when his career was kind of going down the tubes. Billy Joel tried to kill himself. He knows what it's like to suicide. I've tried to kill myself. I know what it's like to be suicidal. So I highly recommend listening to the song Second Wind, and you might find some encouragement in there. And it talks about it sucks. Sometimes things do suck, and that is the human experience, but they get better. And that's where that second wind comes in. The other link I'm going to put in is to a song, also a Billy Joel song, called Pressure, which Billy Joel wrote while he was in the mental home for recovering after trying to kill himself, and talked about the different things that we deal in life that are pressureful. And so, again, I would say to people who feel like you're going to kill you want to kill yourself, you're feeling stressed out, it ties someone into being transgender. If you feel like you're not going to, there's so much stuff against you, you feel like you can't transition. What am I going to, again, guilt and shame. You feel like you're at the end of your rope, you don't know what you're going to do. Wait on that second wind. Wait on it to come around. You will have the opportunity. You may have to wait. And I can share from my own experience. I transitioned in my 20s and fully transitioned. Did it when I was in school, and I lived as a woman, as a girl, as a woman, young lady, and had a good time, and it was wonderful. But I had to stop because I realized that I didn't have the money to continue. I didn't have money to support myself. And so I had to detransition, which, if you don't know what that means, you basically stop taking the hormones. You, in my case, got my hair cut and went back into being a male walking corpse, so that I could work and come up with the money that I needed to so I could later transition. So in the end, you get to transition. You get to be who you want to be. And I hope for anyone that you might be willing to wait for that flower to blossom, so that you can be the woman that you want to be, that you were meant to be. And it may mean you have to wait a little bit, but it will come around. So wait for that second wind, as the song says. All right, my friends. I've gone over. This is probably the longest video I've made. I didn't mean to, but it deals with some serious topics, and definitely something that, middle life again. I have my days. Today I cried when the health woman left, and it really it hit me hard, and I just had to wait for my second wind to come up. So, on that note, I'm human like you. I make mistakes like you. And I hope that we can stick through it. Like I said, wait for the second wind. You'll listen to the lyrics. You'll catch on to it. All right, till next time. Good luck. And hang in there, my friends. It is possible. It is possible. It is achievable. Transitioning is possible. It is achievable. It may not lead you where you think you're going to go, but whew, isn't that life in a nutshell? We don't know where we're going to end up. The future is unwritten. So I would hope to anyone, give yourself a chance to find out where you're going to go. Till next time, my friends, good luck to you. Bye-bye.